And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, let me both your ears. You are listening to the George Espenlaub Show live from the Funny Farm. And we're coming to you from a place called Our World. It's different here in our world. We don't have no mailing address. We never did. We don't. We never will, because we don't know where this place is. All we know is we live here. And so we're delighted that you came to spend some time with us this evening. And whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world, thank you for tuning in. I believe you are going to be inspired, challenged, and most of all, we're all going to get an education on a very relevant subject. But before we go any further, we hired an individual. I call him an individual. We call them individuals in our world here at the Funny Farm. We hired an individual some time ago, and he really hasn't been earning his keep. But tonight, we're going to put him to work. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big applause for the newest member of the Funny Farm Band. Here he is. And there, he earned his keep tonight. So that's the newest member of the Funny Farm Band. And we have a whole lot of other characters floating around here too. And sooner or later, you'll get to meet each and every one of them. But tonight, he is well known by now on our show, Mr. Ed Temple from Columbus, Ohio. Ed, is it cold out there?
It has been very cold today. It's actually been warmer than a few days ago when it was a record low. I think it was yesterday. Get my days mixed up, but a couple of days ago it was a record low. Right now it's probably sitting in the low 30s, maybe down to the 20s today. So yeah, it's definitely, we're feeling it. We're kind of used to it. Every other day in Ohio, it's goes back and forth to whether it is going to be freezing cold or, next thing you know, it's 50 degrees. So, you never know. You never know. We just say Ohio weather. It's all we can say.
We even had snow flurries here in Delaware the other day.
Yeah.
And that is the earliest, I believe, that I've seen snow in the 35 years that I've lived here. So I could do without all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to live in Florida, so believe me,
oh my,
I wouldn't mind living there right about this time.
There's the book that Ed Temple wrote, Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation. Wow, what a tremendous read. We've had people suggest to us that we come on and we do some segments, chapter by chapter. And when we saw this, it struck me, that's a brilliant idea, because my, oh my, so many times when we interview people, we do 15, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever, and it's done, gone. Before you know it, people say, I barely remember. Some people say, I don't remember that at all. But so this is such a relevant subject, and it affects all of us, parents, guardians, grandparents. It affects each and every one of us, to the point that we must understand. And I think, every time I say I think, then I forget what I was thinking. But I think I said tonight, don't be deceived by mediocrity. And it's so easy for people to say, it's not as bad as it seems.
Right.
It's not the way it looks. Uh, just bypass it. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a train wreck right before our very eyes. And
Yes.
there's metal and fragments of things flying all over the place. And we need to know exactly what to do. So, for the next several weeks, we're going to be doing these segments, and Ed is going to be educating us about how serious this problem is and make us aware. And I want to say this before I turn this thing over to Ed. Make sure you know, wherever you're at, wherever you're from, make sure you know what school choice is in your state. We're going to find out what school choice really should be, but find out what school choice is in your state. We got the words here in Delaware, school choice, but when you check into it and you read the law and you read the other sections of it, you find out that school choice is not really school choice. There's some
Right.
exemptions there. Learn what school choice is in your locale, and then you'll be more equipped to combat this thing, because it is, I'm telling you, it's a real monster, and we've talked about it before. Ed, Miss Cassandra said, hi, Ed.
Hi.
And she's
Hello.
from down there in Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
And so one fine individual, and Miss Cassandra, you make sure that Mom finds out that I said hello. Make sure you tell her. Ed?
Yeah.
Your book, and I've been reading it. It is to the point, relevant, and necessary. So take it away from there.
Okay. Well, what I want to do is just see how well I can get this introduction read here real quick. Do you mind if I do that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I understand public schools are valued by some as necessary to prepare individuals to function in a civil society. But after teaching in the inner city public schools for nearly 2 decades, I have concluded that public schools, especially inner city public schools, are overall counterproductive. Thus, school choice vouchers are necessary for many to escape Uncle Sam's Plantation's deeply flawed system. And that's pretty much the essence of the book, as you can see. I wrote the book after teaching. I've taught in Pennsylvania, taught in a suburb in Ohio. I went to Pennsylvania to teach. I taught in Florida, and then circled back to Ohio. I have a pretty extensive career of teaching, whether it's been in the rural areas to suburb to the inner city, and of course, and throughout the years, I have been in contact with many of those all around, and then even in within the big city that I taught in, I was able to teach kids from all over the city because we had these different programs that allowed for kids even in the suburbs to come in as students. So we had a whole variety of students, and it's the biggest district in the state for a school. Uh, and so I've had a very good line of experience, and what I've figured is exactly what George says: is we are in trouble. We have to figure something out right away. And I just on my radio show, I had probably, if you wanted to point out the man in in school choice, it's Joe Nathan, and this guy is a trailblazer and has been around for decades, and I was shocked. He made the statement. I said, Joe, do you think that taxpayer money? And here's a very influential man. He's all over. I mean, he's a great researcher, a great writer, He has publications everywhere. He goes to state governments to help them write laws for charter schools, for college credit for high school students. Very powerful man, and he said tax money should follow the student. Now that's a powerful statement because a lot of people have thrown that out there, and very few times do they ever get somebody in his position to make that statement. So that was huge. And so obviously there's a huge need. There's a huge demand. There's also a huge resistance. And we all know that for me, I see two of the biggest resistors are right now. Everybody knows there's the union. And as I just had the founder of Zenith News and the producer of Zenith News on the show, Charles Benninghoff, and he believes that the unions are going to have to switch gears a little bit here in a good way. He really believes that the unions are going to actually start polling for kids a little bit instead of just polling for their own agenda because of the Janus Supreme Court case that people that are in unions don't have to, people that believe that unions are going against their values don't have to join them. Well, that's a huge deal because now the unions are going to have to actually not just be a tool for one political party. And so that ought to make huge inroads and hopefully make a big difference. If he's right, it'll make a huge difference. And of course, maybe it's all wishful thinking. Maybe we're too far gone. There's all these extremes. But so the book was written as a reaction to what I experienced, and I left, and I couldn't be happier for myself individually because teaching at a Christian school compared to teaching at a public school, well, first off, it's obviously a much better fit for me. I don't have to worry about getting fired every day for saying God or for speaking a truth, in particular one that comes out of Scripture. But I'm also not harassed every day or belittled, or and coming home and wishing I didn't have to go back to work. I actually enjoy coming to work, and so that's a huge difference. With respect to the kids, though, it's unfortunate that um, the kids have to suffer. That staying in these public schools because it's not fair to them because they are getting an inferior education. They're dealing with things that you shouldn't even have to deal with. I wrote one of the last chapters of this book. I wrote about my friend. I'll call him EJ, and he, which I warned him, but he learned the hard way. His kid had been going to Catholic schools since they were, first in school, and it just so happened he said, "You know what? Let's try the public school out." Well, it didn't take him to spend the whole one academic year there before he said, "Oh goodness, I got to get them out of there." They were coming home, and they were saying things that grown people shouldn't say on a U.S. Navy ship. And these are little kids. We're talking about third and fourth graders. So anyways, he learned the hard way that wasn't the best place, the best place for his kids to, the best learning environment for his kids. So the public schools, like I said, not all of them. There's some good public schools. I'll give you a specific example. There is a particular school, let's say in Columbus, that is very well known for their plays at the high school. And years ago, they would do Christmas plays, and then of course they got scared out of doing those, so they decided to go the other direction, which they're allowed to do the other direction, which is, and I'm not kidding about this. Doing plays that have, now obviously they're not taking their clothes off, but they're having orgy scenes, transgenders, and of course kissing with the transgender kids, and things that are just, first off, it is way out there. It's got they're using Christmas songs, changing the words to put foul language in the song, so they're effectively making fun of Christians instead of, they went the opposite direction. They went from, oh, you're having a play during Christmas vacation, before Christmas vacation, about Christmas, and that's offensive, to let's make fun of the Christians. And so it is a hostile environment to, in particular, Christians, but for kids in general. And so that's is for me. I had to step out of them because it was just too much, and it's sad too. So I was in my last years before getting into retirement, and it was a terrible thing to have to leave, and I hated leaving for the kids' sake. But I hate to admit it, but I just couldn't take it anymore. It was just wearing on me, and of course it was getting worse and worse in terms of um, just being a day to day thing, getting harassed by kids. Once a kid, the environment now is so caustic towards Christians, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it when I told you. I'll give you an example. In the public school, they have the creation story, the creation story, but they teach it during the Greek mythology unit. Or they have also at their senior year they have required readings where they teach that all religions are the same. Or what was the last one was seventh grade required reading material, Earth Girl, which has all kinds of things. I don't want to do a promotional plug for that, but it's got sexual scenes in it. It's got anti-capitalist jargon in it. And so this is what they're getting. And of course, everybody's heard about the Common Core, the kind of nonsense that's in that. And so the government schools, the public schools, or if you want to call them the Plantation, they're a hot mess. And it's not just I've been out of there for a few years now, and they're still having issues. They're teacher training. Everything is, and I hate to do the racial thing, but they're making everything racial. They're racializing everything. They have speakers that come in and make now keep in mind, over 60% of teachers are, identify with being white. And if you are, oh, they belittle you and say, you can't teach these kids. You have to teach them differently. And you're white privilege this and white privilege that every meeting. And then you should be teaching about, when leaders have, if there's an insinuation in a book that a individual is homosexual, you need to tell the kids that they were homosexual heroes. I mean, this is, and I'm not playing about that. This is what the agenda is, just pushed every single training, and they have monthly trainings, and then you have in the summer you have trainings, and every training is pretty much the same agenda being pushed. So it's not about, hey, let's teach the kids better. Here's some new techniques to try. No, we're reformatting your mentality. We want you to feel like you should be you're assumed guilty. You're not allowed to, we are allowed to generalize you. You're not allowed to make any generalizations, which, and so it is an uncomfortable environment, and it's not just for teachers, but for students as well. And what an insult to tell a kid that they have to be taught differently just because of their perceived racial identity, which is another thing too. I mean, what are they going to do when they go to college? You think they're going to cater to people based on their racial identity, and the fact that they're even bringing that up as anything? I mean, kids learn differently, but it's not because of their skin color. Okay, so just the idea is it's crazy, and so that's the impetus of the book, and so that's what I get into in the first chapter, or the introduction is just the idea that vouchers or something like vouchers, some type of the ability to have school choice is a necessary thing. And of course, at the end, I get a little bit more specific.
Can I throw can I throw this in here, Ed?
Throw a bunch.
And I have to bring this up so I could read it. This is school choice in Delaware, public policy in Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of these figures go back to 2014, 15, 13, but this is what it says. School choice programs provide alternatives to parents who do not wish to send their children to the local public schools to which they are assigned. Public school choice options include open enrollment policies, magnet schools, and charter schools. Now, if we would give you a test right about now and we would ask you which one's missing, I'm sure that it's already in your mind. In addition,
Right.
governments may provide financial assistance to parents who pursue private school options.
Hmm.
This assistance may take the form of school vouchers, which allow public school students to attend private schools, scholarship tax credits, personal tax credits and deductions, and education savings accounts, which allow
Hmm.
parents to receive public funds directly for educational. And then it goes on to talk about public charter schools. And then
Hmm.
it goes to this. Proponents argue that school choice programs improve education outcomes by expanding opportunity and access for historically disadvantaged students. In addition, advocates claim that school choice programs empower parents and improve traditional public schools through competition. Critics contend that these programs divert funds, and there it is, the money, divert
Hmm.
funds from traditional public schools, thereby generating unequal outcomes for students. In addition, some critics argue that school voucher programs wrongly direct tax dollars to religious organizations which operate many private schools. And then it goes down the list. And this is what I found fascinating.
Hmm.
Charter schools in the school year 2015-2016, charter schools in the state of Delaware, there was 27. There was 14,400 estimated enrollments in those charter schools, which
Hmm.
accounted for 11.1% of the population. Then it talks about magnet schools.
Hmm.
There was 3 magnet schools with a total enrollment of 2,480. Minority enrollment percentage was 31%. Student to teacher ratio was 18 to 1. And it talked about open enrollment policy. Then it gets into this, and this is what I wanted to bring out. Private schools are operated by private organizations as opposed to government entities. Private schools typically rely on tuition, private grants, and donations for funding. Because private schools are not operated or funded directly by government entities, they may operate under different personnel and curriculum standards. Private schools are often associated with religious institutions. According to the National
Hmm.
Center for Education Statistics, there were 5,395,740 students enrolled in 33,620 private schools nationwide in the fall of 2013. This accounted for approximately 10% of the total school age population. And here's the thing. In Delaware, there were 23,640 students enrolled in 120 private schools in the fall of 2013,
Hmm.
which accounted for roughly 16.8% of the state's total school age population. And it gives the same figures down below. But when it comes down to the bottom line, uh, there is no funding. According to the Freeman Foundation for Educational Choice, as of May 2016,
Hmm.
Delaware provided no financial assistance, either in the form of vouchers or tax credits, to parents wishing to send their children to private schools instead of public schools.
Right.
Isn't that a shame?
Well, yes. And here's the thing. I read a lot of different articles, and I read all the main arguments against school choice. Now, obviously, I took them all apart in the book. Easy to do, by the way. But they one of the things they always bring up is, and then a little asterisk to it is, one of their issues is their main issue. They always list it last. They save it for last as if it was just happened to go to it, which is religion. The number one reason, and this is the Chicago Tribune did a story on this. So did NPR. So did Ed Choice. Did a story on what the number one reason that kids want out of the public schools is for religious instruction. So the number one reason they want out is religious instruction. They want out is religious instruction. So they want to hear about God is the number one reason. Yet, if you read between the lines, the number one reason they want to keep you in their schools is to keep you from God. The irony of that. So here they want to make fun of God, put creation, the creation story in the Greek mythology. They want to be able to make fun of God. They want to teach you about Darwin, how you're just an accident. Heaven forbid you actually say the word Christmas tree or Christmas. But if you want out, you can't use your own tax money and channel to the school you want because, well, in their mind, it hurts the public school. Of course, the research says way different. It actually, as of the way it's designed now, in most school districts, which they need to change it because the schools should get all the money. But right now, they only get a small percentage of it. For example, the kids here that are on vouchers, let's say they get $5,000 or $6,000 of a voucher. Well, those same kids, if they were gone to the school they came from, would be that school district gets $12,000 or $13,000. So they're only getting about half of it, half the money allocated. The school actually gains money because they're getting a $12,000 per child. Well, they're getting a $6,000 for no child. So they're actually benefiting by school choice in that way. And then, of course, the competition of it, they're going to lose out on too. So they're not losing out on that. And that's kind of leads to this first chapter in the book. It talks about my first chapter in the book. It says the Plantation's failed attempts to fix the problems they create. So they get to create problems. And what's the parental remedy for all the chaos in public schools? Say, hey, we want out. So what do? They lobby politicians. They make sure all the Board of Education are all one political party. And so then, of course, they give them everything they want. To give them pretty much every raise they ask for. They put up a phony fight, and then they'll ask for a levy. And they get it. And they'll just say, we're cutting all the sports. Next thing you know, it's passed. And so they create all kinds of problems, and then they lobby to keep parents from getting the choice to opt out. And so what do they get? What do they always ask for? We need more money. The money's going to solve the problem. We're getting twice as much as the public school that's doing twice as good. The private school that's doing twice as good. We're getting twice as much money to do half as good of a job. And so this is a crazy thing. And they ought to be cheering it on based on how much benefit they're getting out of. As of now, they're squashing how many kids are allowed to leave. So, there's limited kids that are leaving. Like you said, 10% of this country are not public school kids. So 90% of this country are public school kids. They already have 90%. And they're still trying to keep parents from leaving even at that rate. When it should be, all kids should be allowed to leave. And so, I'll give you an example. A school I was teaching at for a while, the results were terrible, and largely we were kind of set up to fail. They would keep giving us rookie principals, unqualified. They weren't even. They had only been they're not bad people necessarily, but one of them took over, and he had only been assistant principal for maybe a year, and and they throw him in the fire, and it was, so 3 in a row were a disaster. 2 literally got fired, and it's hard to fire people, and so 2 of them got fired. And one of them is still actually demoted himself. He said, this head principal thing, I'm out of that. I'm going to be an assistant principal. And so they set him up for failure. And so the school keeps continuously failing. And then we get all the kids from failing schools or kicked out of other schools. So you basically set up the school to fail with giving them the kids nobody else wants, and just to keep it open. And then they added a middle school. We became a 7 to 12 school just to keep it open because the enrollment was so low. So then they turn around and say, you know what? Since we've wasted the last, 20 some years of failing results, you know what? I think you need a new building. Now we're going to give you $43 million to build a new school that they can tear up as soon as they get in it. Instead, they got a school that was actually working right down the road. They could have put in the building. So that's what they do. So it's always more money, more money, more money. And guess what? The results are the same or worse than they were before. Now just about the whole city is failing, except for one or two schools. And of course, there's also geopolitical things that they let go on too within the city. The last two mayors have been pushing refugee status, which that's great. Glad we have refugees, but they also are allowing with the refugees. It gives them the excuse to also allow a huge amount of illegal residents. And so what happens is the district has to spend enormous amounts of money, resources to add buildings and things just for kids to be taught English so they can catch up. Good kids, don't get me wrong. Really good little communities that have sprung up. But the problem is when you add too many of any type of kid that needs more services, that drains the resources. And of course, in the other buildings have no central air, and they have to have days off of school because it gets so hot in the buildings. And meanwhile, they're having all kinds of resources diverted because of geopolitics. And so, anyway, so that's part of the problem. The failed attempts to fix their own problems. I dedicated a chapter to that, and then I've already alluded to the fact that there's these unholy alliances with the unions. You scratch my back, we'll take care of you, we'll get you voted in office, we'll give you all kinds of money, and in turn, you give us that nice cushy deals and block anything from happening in terms of school choice. So they're thwarting that. And as I also alluded to in the second chapter of the book, I just mentioned the third chapter. I'm going backwards now, but the second chapter talks about lowering the bar. And so what you do at the end of the school year, when the failure rate's really high and nobody's doing any homework, I used to the last few years I was teaching, I became like the hardest teacher. And I said, wow, it's kind of weird. It's not exactly like what I'm doing is all that challenging. I tell them, here's what's going to be on the test, X, Y, Z. Maybe give them a study guide. No tricks. I don't try to trick you. I don't try to reword the type of question and the kids the handful of kids that would study and do homework, they're getting A's, 100%, no problem. But if you ask the kids when they came in, they would brag about, hey, I'm not studying. Hey, I'm not doing homework. And so I start looking at their report card. Hey, let me see your report card. Hey, you're the only one I got a bad grade in. I said, really? So I find out that, nobody's giving any homework anymore. They're telling us not to. And at the end of the year, they're pressuring people like me to just pass them along. So I'm the bad guy, So I become the bad guy. And I had been doing, teaching the same way for years. But for years, everybody was apparently keeping up with me, and I didn't stand out. But for whatever reason, over time, everybody's been watering down, and like I told you, in these professional developments, if you want to call them that, professional digression, I think. But if they want to call it development, professional breaking you down and making you worse. So by the time they're done, these teachers are just feeling guilty about giving homework, feeling guilty, hey, oh, they're, feeling sorry for everything about them, which is the opposite of what they need. They're behind. They need to catch up. You need to give them less.
Mm-hmm.
You may be more efficient with it. Oh, they can't do homework. Really? That's kind of weird. They've been doing it for years. What changed? So just things like that. And so that's the things we kind of deal with on a daily basis. So I go from there in the book till we've hit the topics of chapter 1, chapter 2. So chapter 1's Plantation's failed attempts to fix the problems. Chapter 2, lowering the bar. Chapter 3, the unholy alliances. And then chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the one where a teenager would love to read chapter 4 because it is the one that is connected to them, which is the daily life. What's it like to be in the plantation school? How do things go? And that's one of the things you'll notice the very first day, at least coming here, and I'm sure other private, in particular Christian schools. You go in the hallway, and I don't have to constantly look over my shoulder, see if someone's going to throw something at my head, or in other words, my life is not in danger when I'm at the Christian school. When I was at the public school, my goodness, I had two kids just in the last year I was teaching. Two kids had shot and killed another kid right out in the street during school, and we're talking about right down the road from the school. I had two other kids, both of them in my class, and one had shot and killed the other one. And anyway, so it's the daily life, and don't think that that's rare. It's far more common than you think. I have a guy that's that I met through the radio shows and things, that he'll tell you. He worked in New Jersey schools, Lee McNulty, and he's got a book out, and he's got like a diary. It's a thick book. I got it over here in my room, and he chronicles the kind of chaos that goes on in the public schools, what they allow. I mean, it's chaotic. You come into a typical public school, and I'm not talking about just the inner city ones now. I'm talking about many of the suburbs now are chaotic. I was just watching a scrimmage and watching the behavior of some of the girls from the public school, how they were behaving. I was like, oh my goodness, just the kind of things that they do that they just didn't used to do, and it's just common now. Just the rude behavior, the just the bad habits, things that they think are normal that they don't know any better. We've had to redirect a lot of kids here that just came out of the public school, because they just some of them just don't know how to be students anymore. So they have to be retaught, because they've been taught that certain behaviors are acceptable, and it's just you're just shaking your head like, wow, man, this is what I thought I escaped. Now it's not a whole bunch of them, but the point, and they're good kids. Don't get me wrong. They just have to, you have to, like, hey, that's not okay here. That was okay there. That's not okay here. So we got to work on that. And so that's what we're dealing with there. But I'm not sure what's the Connecticut has their share of problems in their schools too, huh?
Hmm. You know and I often think about this, and I probably mentioned it to you before.
Mm-hmm.
What really amazes me is we're supposed to learn from history. We're supposed to learn from our own mistakes. Uh, we're really not supposed to make the same mistake twice.
Right.
And I often think we went from when the school in early America, when the school was in the church. That's where the schoolhouses started, in the
Mm-hmm.
church. The church was the church. The church was the school. The school was the church. And how we have went from there to where we are now. And sometimes you look and you think, we didn't learn a lick. I mean, we just didn't get it, or we don't get it. Something just isn't right. And I
Mm-hmm.
often think about that when you were saying about it's not acceptable in the public school to talk about
Mm-hmm.
God, or to pray,
Right.
or to mention Christmas, and so on and so forth. When that used to be the norm, and now they turn that into the norm and make the right abnormal and the abnormal normal.
Right.
Uh, if you can keep up with that, you're really
Well,
doing good.
well,
But
like you said, that I think we've had this conversation before. Was it all the way up to the 1950s? The Bible was still in pretty much every public school in the United States.
yes, it was. Yes, it was. And every day when we went to school, we didn't have kindergarten when I was a kid. You went straight to first grade, so you went 1 through 12. But every day when you went to school, the teacher would read scripture, and we would all stand and we would say the Lord's Prayer, We would pledge allegiance to the flag,
Hmm.
and nobody, nobody was offended. Nobody went screaming to the principal's office. Nobody went home screaming, you know, oh my goodness gracious, Aunt Sally. They read the Bible. I mean,
Right.
it was a normal, everyday occurrence in our lives from first grade all the way through. And I
Right.
think, my goodness, talk about a train wreck. Wow. And that's where we're at today.
Yeah, and we've gone from being a country that was not ashamed to say, that we're a Christian. Obviously, we're still celebrating Christmas. I remember and went to Best Buy a couple years ago, and I complained, and I said, I'm here to buy Christmas items. You have no symbolism of Christmas here. What's your problem? Well, we don't want to offend people. I said, well, if you're offended by me coming here to buy Christmas presents for Christmas, then maybe I should shop somewhere else.
Mm,
Well, I'm not saying it was me that did it, but the very next year it was Christmas everywhere there, and I think that's you know uh, part of the new. I just think people have gotten tired of political correctness on that. But my thing is, if you don't want to hear about God, I have a guy next Thursday on my show, and he is creation scientist, and not only does he think that it should be taught in schools, he doesn't teach it as if it's, hey, this is just some kind of willy nilly, you know, uh, something for the far, the fundamentalist Christian. No, he says creation story, creation science is valid. It's just as valid, actually, far more valid, actually, than macroevolution. This idea that voila,
mm,
bang, and you have to defy all logic to believe in this wacko stuff coming from nowhere. And so, anyway, so he's going to be on because this is the thing. And, in schools, these kids from day one are taught, you know what? There's no God. You're an accident. You're nothing more than another animal.
hmm.
And as a matter of fact, you're worse than an animal because I'll go save my dog, but I'll have Planned Parenthood to tell us how we can get rid of our human beings.
Right.
So in other words, so what they're teaching is that you're not valuable. Matter of fact, we have to lower the bar, as a chapter in the book says. We have to lower the bar for you. You're not as capable as those kids over there. So let's just pass you along. Just show up to class. We'll find a way to pass you. I mean, this is the mentality. And by the way, it's not just in the, like I said, in the inner cities. I have no kids that go in the suburbs, and let's say there's 500 people in their graduating class. Well, over 100 of them are tied for first. They don't even do a valedictorian anymore. They're
Mm,
tied for first. They have all over 4.0s. Now you're going to tell me that you have 20% of your school are just straight A students. And I've been doing this rodeo a little bit too long to know that's not happening unless you're just kind of handing out grades. So that's crazy to me. Goodness gracious. I mean, seriously, I'm not that I have a problem with people getting A's, but there's no way that you're putting them to the task, working them out like a 4.0 kid should be worked. They
mm,
should. There should be some. You shouldn't be able to, work a 40 hours a week and get a 4.0. These kids are working full time and they're in 50,000 activities and magically getting straight A's. I'm like, nah, there's something's got to give here. I'm not saying it's not possible, but not for 20% of the school. Not going to believe that one at all. So the point is that things are just watered down wherever you go. It's the everybody gets a trophy mentality in schools, and that's what they're teaching you. You're teaching them all the superficial things, and schools right now they shut down. They shut down for weeks at a time to teach to the test. So they become pretty good at passing tests eventually. I mean, their scores may not be good initially, but they eventually pass because they're taking it such a high percentage of the year. Very little else gets done in the public school, in particular in the inner city ones. Very little else besides teaching to the test gets done. So you're getting kids that are, like you mentioned, and that's of course that's a chapter in the book. I'll get back to that. But Waters World students, they're they come up, they can't tell you who the vice president is. They can't tell you what's really going on in the world, and everything is basically a repeat of like the media, a bunch of robots. They all
Mhm.
say the same thing. Media montage. Same exact same words, saying the exact same things on every channel at the same time. And that's the kind of student they're trying to produce. Not thinking creatures, not thinking beings, not thinking souls that are important, that are valued. Just another name and number. We're just trying to get you through the system, fudge the numbers as much as we can, clean the data, as they call it.
You had two young fellas last week, and I really enjoyed that. Two young fellas that were in public school in the past. Now they're
Yeah.
going to your Christian school.
Yes.
Uh, these young men, and I told my wife, and my grandson was home on leave. We sat here and watched it together. Number one, very well mannered, very respectful, uh, articulate,
Amen.
and and you could tell they were speaking from a heart of sincerity. Uh, Tell us about those young fellows, Ed, and where people can see that video.
Yeah, I have videos on. I have the video on YouTube, and if they just Google Ed Temple, shouldn't have much trouble finding it. But if you go on my YouTube, what do they call it, channel, you just go to the YouTube channel, you look up my name, or maybe type in school choice, and their videos on the very first couple videos, you'll find it no problem. And so yeah, they get on there, and actually they asked to be on the show. Of course, I get other kids asking too, but can you get me on? I'm like, not on that show. Nah, maybe we'll do a sports show or something. But they were perfect because they're exactly what the book is about. They're examples of why all kids need the opportunity. I'm not saying all kids have to go to a private Christian school, but it should be an option. And our school caters to it. We are uh, in this particular school, we have kids from all over the world, but it's a small school for the most part. It's a mega church, but a small school, and the kids are valued. The kids all know each other. They all get along. We don't have fights. When I was in the public school, it was a daily either conversation and they didn't just fight. They would knock down dragouts out in the street, and you got to worry about getting shot even as a teacher, you had to worry about going out of the building. But these kids are talking about the chaos, that go on in the public school and the ones they came from. Not all necessarily all, uh, but they came when they got here, they were just from day one shocked about the totally different, the personality of the school, the climate, and how much the teachers. I mean, this both of those kids, they come up and hug us every day. I'm like, my goodness, I'm about out of hugs, but I'll just so that's usually when kids doing all the hugging, that's usually middle school age. But now these guys, they're just so happy to be here, and they love it. And the kids love them, and it's not like they're not quality guys. They've gotten in, like them, like everybody else. They come here and they have some bad habits, but like little things that that you can be a little bit more. When you go to a public school, you get away with doing silly things like wearing funny glasses and doing distracting clothes. But here, there's a uniform. You're gonna be told to take your headphones off. You're gonna be, you're not gonna be walking around in your uniform showing your underwear. There's standards, and there's also when a kid has problems, they uh, they can go and pray with a teacher. They can get prayed for, pray with. You can actually do things that is the right thing to do.
What do you find, like in the chapter that, of your book where you say they lower the bar?
Hmm.
What do you find now when students went to the schools where they lowered the bar, and then they come to a private school and the bar is raised?
Yeah,
How do they react to that?
yeah, and that's the thing too. As soon as they play catch up. And that's why I have a system that I've implemented with a pro. It's an online program, and that's what I use for my homework. And that's I use that as it's a filler. And so when their grade level is behind, and some of them are, they are, you have to find ways to catch them up. And the way you do that is, obviously you have to maximize instruction time, but then you have to get them on these. There's some online math programs that fill in the gaps, and if they're able to do that, you can get them to do that, which is hard to get them because remember they're used to coming from public school, not really doing much homework. And so if you can get them on that, then they come in after school. See, the school here is designed, the way it's designed is, school's out at 2:20, but the teachers aren't done till 3:15. So that gives that 2:20 to 3:15 time for them to come in for tutoring. So
Mhm.
we get kids coming in. I have at least a handful of kids coming in every day. And so they'll come in and, they'll get whatever help they need. And then they do that for all their teachers. They have a couple that they need more, to go to more often than others because they're a little bit more challenging, difficult to get the grade. So that's just trying to fill in the gaps with whether it's in a program or whether it. And of course, the program is a lot more fun than let's say paperwork. It's a lot more interactive and so on. Get
Do they
immediate feedback.
do they find do they find that whereas before they weren't challenged, now they're being challenged? Do they find out all of a sudden that they like it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so the answer to that is some of them resist. Of course, one thing they do know. See, the good thing is here because there's so much love and attention, they want to be here. They don't. These guys don't try to miss school. They try to come to school. And so the ones that have the resistance, the immediate resistance, they fall in line because they already know once you get, certain grades, they're going to warn you, and then the next time they're going to kick you out of here. So
Mm,
we don't, you're not going to stay here with bad grades, you know, and so uh, they know that going in. So and besides that, for our coaches, they don't let them get bad grades. They're not getting on the honor roll. You don't get to go to practice. You sit out and you go get your teacher, you find out what your makeup work is until you get your grades back up to honor roll. Then you can come back to practice. And
mm.
so that's their mentality. And guess what? Just about all of our kids, we have 100% graduation rate. And so and not just graduation rate, we have 100% that either are in that go on to armed forces or they go into, college, all of them. They all go. And so the expectations here are far greater than normal. And it's not that we're necessarily getting in. We have all walks of life here. We have kids, from, way up here and to way down here. But even the way down here's, I don't care if they're special needs kid, you know, they all are made feel comfortable. There's not a kid here that's, the other kids make fun of, or unless they try to do something, be silly on purpose. But I mean, they don't tease them for. They just help each other. We have kids. If it's a kid that's behind, I'll pair them up with somebody. That kid will follow them around, helping them all day. That's the kind of attitude they have. It's a different environment.
Wow. Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, we took our first class tonight. We how many times we've been together now, Ed? 3 or 4?
At least.
Yeah. Uh, they were preliminaries. They was
This is the
they was
real
get
deal.
yeah, they was getting us ready for the classroom. Tonight we spent the first night in the classroom, and we have much more to come. My goodness. So, one more time, let me challenge you. Please find out what school choice is in your area. Look it up. Go talk to somebody. Don't be afraid to say, "Hey, explain this to me." And listen to see if everybody is included or there's someone that is excluded. Well, it's for this, and this. And right away the bell rings. Well, what about this? Well, nah, then you're not a state that is truly school choice. So let's do something about it. Uh, and as Ed challenged people the last time we was on, if there's any politicians out there that would love to come and talk to us about this particular subject, please do. There's my name. Ed, Ed Temple, Google him. I'll guarantee you, if you Google Ed Temple or Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation, just Google, I dare you. He'll jump right up there. He'll be there like a jack in the box, up Pop's head. So if you want to come, just get a hold of us, and you're more than welcome to come. And we can sit down and we can talk this thing over. But moms and dads, guardians, aunts and uncles, grandparents, check into this thing and please don't be deceived by mediocrity. Please don't. This is a real train wreck that's taking place in real time, and we can do something about it. So, our teacher educated us tonight. Ed, we're going to do this again next week.
Sure.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right.
Same time.
All right. Report to the classroom next week. We'll post it up on the bulletin board so everybody can see, and you'll know that it's time to come back to class. Ed, thank you, my friend.
Appreciate you having me.
He's a fine, fine gentleman, and he's a real good friend, and I'm proud to call him my friend. Get that book. Oh, I need to get over this cold someday. Get that book, and here's where you can get it. Right there at Amazon.com. You can't miss it. Just type in there Escape Uncle Sam's Plantation. It'll jump right there. Escape from Uncle Sam's Plantation. It'll jump right up there in front of you, and get that book and read it. It's a fun read. Ed broke it down that we can read it, we can understand it, and we'll know exactly what he's talking about. So please take the time, go get that book. And Ed, you tell that gang right there that I said hello. And
I'll do that.
And I send my love. And I hope those boys keep mom and dad straight.
Yeah, they got a football game this Saturday, and we'll all be there rooting them on because they're in the second round of the playoffs now. So they're I'm right now at school waiting. I was waiting for them to get out, and and as of now they've left, but I'm going to meet them over the in-laws where we're going to stay the night tonight.
All righty. Thank you, Ed. God bless you, buddy. And I'll talk at you soon.
Okay. Appreciate you having me on, and definitely do it next week for sure.
All righty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. And for those that's down the street, around the corner, across America, and around the world, this is George Espenlaub saying, wherever you're at, if it's nighttime, have a good night. If it's daytime, have a good day. But regardless of what time it is or where you're at, I pray that God will keep you right in the center of his hand. And until next time, God bless you. Good night, Ed.
Good night.